Be doing some in-hand work with Atlas. So I'm going to get his reins clipped on. I'm just going to be working in the halter. I plan to continue working with him in the halter. Eventually, maybe he'll have like a side pull or a bosal or something like that. But um, for a long time, I do plan on working in this halter. I don't think we're going to really work with the bit. I might teach him how to take one, but I think I'm just going to keep him in this. I found with pretty much all the horses that they prefer not having a bit in their mouth, so we're going to stick with that. So I'm just going to work on some lateral flexion, so just kind of pick up with that rein. That was really nice. Ask him to walk forward. So again, I'm asking him to go forward with my vocal cue first, so walk on is my vocal cue, and then I present the target and have him go forward. So I don't want to spend or waste a lot of time between the two, so I want those two behaviors to be connected, or the vocal cue and the going forward behavior to be connected. So I don't want to just wait and see if he'll do it. If he doesn't do it within a second or two, I'm going to just use the target. Now I'm trying to get him to back up. He thinks maybe go forward. There, he figures it out. So I'm just kind of applying a little bit of pressure on the reins, just like I would to ask him to back up. I'm just kind of taking the slack out and then showing him the answer with the target. And I should have done just the target a couple of times to get him thinking backward and then started using the rein cue. Um, so because he was thinking more forward and he got a little confused there. I don't want to just hold onto the reins and wait for him to figure out the correct answer, which I didn't. I used the target, but I could have done that a little bit better. I'm doing the same thing here, just a little bit further away. I think I had to get more food, or I took a phone call or something, but we're doing the same thing. We're just going to work on the backup. And now that he's kind of thinking about it, it's a little bit easier. So I kind of pick up the reins, he backs up. I kind of have the target there just a little bit kind of underneath his neck, but really not using it a whole lot. There he's offering that behavior, so that would have been a good opportunity to say like back, my verbal cue. I think right at the moment I was focused on the rein cue, but when he's offering it like that, I could definitely work on the verbal cue and start pairing those two things. That's the other thing about clicker training is when they're offering you those behaviors, specifically in the beginning, that's a great place to start teaching those cues instead of just asking them for something else and be like, oh, no, no, that's not what I wanted. I don't care if he does it off cue in the beginning. He's not going to do it on cue in the beginning because he doesn't know the cue. So that's another thing that I really had to change about myself is not worrying about him doing something off cue. I'll worry about that later on, but specifically in the beginning, I'm not going to worry about that. I'm going to use that as an opportunity to teach him my voice cues and really any cues at all, but specifically the voice cue. So I have him go forward. This looks really good. I like that he's moving forward pretty relaxed. I like that he's calm with me kind of by his withers there. I do specifically want him to have like his neck in front of me because I do want it to resemble riding as much as possible. So I don't want to be up by his head in that leading position. I want him to go forward before I do. So again, I have to be careful that I'm not moving my feet and then he moves his. I want him to go forward off of that vocal cue, and then if I need the target, but I don't want him just going forward because he's following me because he won't have that understep. So I think he got confused there and he wanted to back up instead of go forward. So I'm just going to wait and then ask him to go forward, and he goes forward. Again, if he gives me the wrong behavior, it's not a big deal. Um, I just kind of wait with him until he gives me the correct behavior, or like the inclination that he's going into the correct behavior. So that's another thing I need to work on is just little pieces going to the correct behavior versus like, oh, well, you know this, so I want you to walk forward. Like he doesn't know it and he's telling me that. So ask him to go forward again, kind of do a little turn. So I'm kind of taking the slack out of that left rein, and he's kind of turning a little bit to the left. He's following that target to the left. So I'll click and reinforce that. This looks very, very good. I definitely need to work on the stopping or the standing still as well. So he went forward on cue. That looks nice. So I got to make sure that I'm not just always doing something. I want to stand next to him and just reinforce him standing still, and make sure that I add that in so that he doesn't think every time that I'm in this position, he's going to go forward, he's going to go backward, he's going to turn, he's going to do something. That's really important as well, making sure that I can stand there and he can stand and just wait, because that's going to be extremely important under saddle. It's important on the ground, but I don't want him I get up there and he's just going around, especially in those first few rides where, I like both of us could get afraid with him just moving forward. So staying still is very, very important. So just hanging out here with him, kind of petting on his neck, reinforce him for just standing still. Huge, huge behavior. Ask him to go forward. had him go a little bit further than he had before. I also need to be aware of where my hand is positioned on his neck and on the reins because I don't want that to become a cue either. So I want to be careful that sometimes like my hand's on his neck, sometimes my hand's on the reins, sometimes it's not, and I'm still asking him to go forward while my hand's in those different positions because that can also be a cue to the horse if you're not careful. Because what I really want is that vocal cue. That's the cue that I want, is a vocal cue. So, and I could also start teaching maybe a leg cue from the ground as well. But for right now, I'm just going to work on that vocal cue, and then later on we can teach that. I also got to be careful here where I'm kind of feeding him with his head turned to the side. I want to feed him with his head straight and in a good position. There's really nothing good, like I'm not practicing anything good with having his head kind of turned out to the side here, um, when I could be practicing like a good headset where I'd like his head to be. So nice backup in response to the rein cue, the tactile cue from the reins. So this is looking quite nice. I definitely had some other sessions in here that I just didn't show because it was very similar to this, and it just gets really repetitive. I have a lot of videos to edit. So we have been working on this more than just in this video though. So I want him pausing before I have him do anything and then going forward. This looks great. Specifically for Atlas too, this is a big deal. He thinks he gets confused. He thinks maybe he's supposed to back up. No big deal. Kind of have him turn to the left a little bit. But for him, just standing next to him at the shoulder was confusing. Having the reins on him was scary. He had a big fear of rope. So this is a huge, huge deal for him. Castor flew through this a lot faster, just because specifically because he wasn't afraid of the reins and the ropes as much. But this is a huge thing. So even like taking the reins off, taking the halter off is all a big deal for Atlas. So this was a nice little session for him.